The 9% VAT rate, I think the hospitality guys were jumping up and down over that one. Clearly that's been extended out for the very final time, we understand. And then obviously the other announcement was the extension and improvement of the TBES, the Temporary Business Energy Support Scheme. So we look forward to seeing the finer details of that, but certainly what I've seen so far looks to be an improvement on what we had before. I guess, look, going into this, the one thing we're all facing into is uncertainty. It was uncertain last year. It's probably slightly more certain this year, but who knows? Who knows what's around the corner? And that's probably a good segue into introducing Pat from Exemplar Energy. Exemplar Energy have been working in this area of energy costs and so forth for the last 12 years. They're based in Cork, but we won't put that, hold that against them. They're 13 employees. They're one of the biggest companies in this space in energy, and they work with some of the biggest companies in energy, including hundreds of retailers, so at least 100 plus retailers that they're working with constantly around their energy costs. As Pat said to me earlier, it's been a mad time over the last year. He's often had to stand back and just watch where the market's going without really needing to intervene because it just was too expensive almost to intervene. But he'll explain that in a little bit of detail shortly. So sit back, relax, listen to Pat, and if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat box at the bottom, and we'll do our best to answer them right at the end. Pat, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Duncan, for having me here today. Look, just as he was saying, I'm with Exemplar Energy, and we've been in the energy procurement industry for the last 12 years. And the last year has been the most difficult that we've had. And look, it's been difficult for us, but even more difficult for all of our clients. So look, the good news is that things are looking better, and there's been a real turn in things in the last, especially since the turn of the year. So I'm just going to share a quick presentation here to go through that. So starting off, there's a lot of numbers on this screen here, but this is a kind of quick indication of where the energy market's at. And if you even just look at the top line figure, these numbers here represent the price of gas on the international commodity markets, and it's measured in pence per therm. Now, if you go back to the last decade, but before the last 3 years, the normal price of gas would have been in around 30 pence and up to max of 70. And then starting a year and a half ago now, it started going up above 100 and went absolutely crazy for the last year and a half since. A lot of reasons for that, primarily Russia, starting off by reducing supplies for the previous winter and then kicking off the war in Ukraine this time last year. And all the uncertainty and all the supply issues that came from that. So on this graphic, on this chart here, the current daily price is at 125p. And if you go across the lines there, you can see that compared to a week ago, we're actually down nearly 10%. Compared to a month ago, it's nearly 30%. And compared to 6 months ago, it's nearly 80%. You can see the high for the year was 590. And so basically, it's a case that the market has been pretty stable at this level over the last couple of weeks. It's gradually coming down bit by bit over the last month. But we are settling into what seems like a kind of new normal at this level of in around what would probably be 100 to 150 pence. That is far better than anything that we've had in the last year, but it is still double the average that we would have had in the previous decade. And one thing to take note of there, one of the key figures we look at here is that when energy suppliers are doing up a fixed price contract, the key figures they look at are the summer 2023 and winter 2023. And whatever those figures are at, determine what your fixed price will be, because they forward buy and forward hedge at those prices for your fixed price contract. And the way things work in our business, if those rates go up this week, there'll be fixed offers out from suppliers next week that will be higher. And if they come down, then the rates out next week will be lower. So look, we've been very, very, very lucky. This winter has been one of the mildest winters on record, apart from a few cold weeks in December. Across Europe, it's been pretty mild across the board, even compared to America. But they've got an awful cold winter in comparison. So the mild weather has helped greatly with the energy crisis, and it means that we've gotten through this winter at a very good level. So because of the mild weather, it curtailed the heating demand, but there was also a lot of other factors as well. So the EU set out targets last September, when the market really went crazy, to reduce overall demand in the EU by 15%. And we've actually managed to across the entire all of the EU to reduce by 19%. So we've actually it's exceeded that. So it shows that there has been a lot of I'd say latent inefficiencies in companies, and the crisis has focused companies to on their energy consumption and trying to reduce it wherever possible. So coming out of the winter, the gas storage levels are very, very high. We expect to be well over 50%, which is pretty much as good as any winter over the last decade. And it's not something that we would have thought possible going back, 4 or 5 months ago. Coming up to this summer, there was major issues with a lot of the price spikes last summer were also caused by major issues with the French nuclear power plants. They've been resolved, and their output is expected to rise very significantly by about nearly 30% for this summer. So that will also ease the pressures on the markets. And nearly a huge proportion of our gas that was coming from Russia is now coming via LNG tankers from mainly America and Qatar. So these LNGs, the gas is compressed into liquid form, put into massive tankers and shipped across to Europe. And one of the main terminals in the world is called Freeport in Texas in America. That went offline last June due to a fire, and it's finally just started delivering again within the last week. So again, that's another positive outlook for the coming summer. This graph here shows the forward price of summer 2023 for how it's been for the last year. So you can see for last summer it wasn't too bad. It was hovering around the 100 and just over the 150p mark, and then we got into that June, July, August period where normally the market is quite calm, but it went crazy over Russia reducing gas supplies into Europe. And it's taken quite a number of months, but we're finally, since basically Christmas, you can see a big drop off in the market right here just before Christmas, and that's continued gradually. So we're currently at 125p. It is hard to call how low it will go, but as we are dependent on liquid, LNG gas, there is only so low it can go. It will not go back to what we had in previous times, in around 50p. The current, expectations that it might get down to, over the next couple of months, it could possibly get down to around 100p and maybe a bit lower, but that would be it, because we still have to attract the LNG gas to Europe, because we're constantly competing for that LNG with other countries around the world, and primarily China and other countries in Asia would be the main competitors for that energy. So to keep it coming to Europe, the price of gas has to stay at a good level. And this is just a very similar graph showing where storage levels are at, and we're basically on track to match what we had 3 years ago and come out of the winter well over 50%, which will ease pressures for the coming winter, and it means that there should not be any issues getting supplies back up, getting storage levels back full for next winter. So over the last year and a half, it's been, it has been very difficult for suppliers as well. Volatility in the markets have meant that, it's been very difficult for suppliers to keep up with things changing so quickly and prices changing so quickly. a number of suppliers left the market, such as Panda and Iberdrola. And other suppliers have, for most of the last year, not been doing any business apart from their existing client base. So just go through them here very quickly. Electric Ireland at the moment are not giving any pricing offers at all. They only have their what we call their default rates, and they're just they are all waiting for a period of stability before they'll come back into the market, which with what we call normal fixed pricing. Energia have not taken on any new business either, and they're only offering the market tracker products. That's basically tracking the price of electricity on the daily market. Now, Bord Gáis, Flowgas, and Electricity are all pricing at the moment, and they'll give fixed price offers for 12 months. So if you're looking for a fixed price contract, they're the three best at present that will do that. And then you've Pinergy and Go Power, and again, they will do market tracker offers for new business as well for 1 year. So on the product, you're just going to take the price of electricity as it is per day. Big change in the last month has been what's happened in the last few months has been what's happened with out of contract rates. So if you're not in a contract with a supplier, then you're being charged the out of contract, or sometimes they call it the default rate, by that supplier. These rates are set every 6 or 9 months, and they're based on the market prices at the time that the supplier is doing their forward hedge. So a lot of the hedges would have been done last October, November time. And what the situation that we had is that for most of last year, these rates were actually lower than the fixed price offers, because a lot of them were set in March or April of last year. They stayed at that level for the year, but because the market went up all the time throughout the year, they went past those out of contract rates. So the scenario was that for most of last year, if you went out of contract, you were actually better off just staying out of contract, because there was no fixed rate offers that were anywhere close or made any sense to go with. But in the last few months, all the suppliers have increased these rates, and they're now all between 50 and 60 cents per unit. In the last month, contract rates have come down quite significantly, and now they're between 30 and 40 cents per unit, depending on the supplier and depending on the tariff that you're on. So now there's a gap of nearly about 20 cents per unit between being in a contract and not being in a contract. So getting onto a contract rate is now vital for anyone who hasn't done this so far. The main choice for companies is now between, do you go on a fixed price contract or a market tracker? So the fixed prices that are available from suppliers, what they offer changes every week or two. These rates, they're mainly based on where the forward price of gas is for the coming year. And like I said earlier, a drop in the price of gas this week will lead to lower fixed prices the following week. These options, if you go with them, your rate is fixed for 12 months. If the market comes down, you're not going to pay any less. If the market goes up, you're not going to pay any more. But they do give budget certainty. The other option at the moment is a market tracker contract. And this is 100% variable. You are tracking the daily price of electricity, and you basically pay a small margin to the supplier, but you take all the risk. Now, at the moment, the market tracker is coming in about 5 cents per unit lower than fixed price contracts. And it's been like that for the last couple of months, the last 2 months in particular. So if in the best case scenario over the next couple of months, if there's no crisis or anything else blows up that affects the energy markets, then that could easily perform very well and come down. But over the coming year, something can happen that can cause the market to shoot back up again. And one thing that the last year has taught us is that the market's scale has changed completely. And in previous times, an increase of 5 pence in the price of gas in a week, we'd be going, wow, what a big increase. Now, over the last year, we've had increases of 50 and 100p within the space of a few days. And so the scale of change in the market has, I think, changed for quite some time. And again, another crisis could cause that to jump back up again. So just a few very quick energy tips, for anyone who's looking to keep on top of your electricity accounts. One of the main things is just know your exact renewal date. The amount of times companies I deal with do not know what date their contract is up for renewal. So you have to make sure you know it and be looking well in advance of your renewal date for options, to make sure that you don't go out of contract. Because at the moment, like I said, that gap between being in the contract and not in the contract is over 20 cents, is about 20 cents per unit. If you have multiple sites, you try and have them all on the same renewal date. It just makes it much more convenient, and you try to get them all done at one time, at the same time in the year. With the sites that you have, you can have situations where your site is on the wrong tariff or have incorrect KVA settings. So I've seen many cases where you should be on a higher tariff or you should be on a lower tariff. It's part of the service that we provide, that we analyze your tariff and make sure that's all correct. Like in any walk of life and anything that you're doing, always compare offers from a number of suppliers and see what's out in the market. Avail of the government TBESS scheme, the TBES scheme. As Duncan mentioned at the start there, that has, there was an announcement just there this week that scheme has been extended until the end of May. And the main thing is that they've actually changed the entire scheme, really, going all the way back to the start of September. So from now on, there was a threshold that you needed to have an increase of 50% in your electricity costs compared to the same month the previous year. Now it's only a 30% increase. So that will open up for lots and lots of retailers in particular this scheme, because there was many cases I saw of companies just being barely outside the 50% increase, and they weren't able to avail of the scheme. Now they can, and they can claim all the way back to September. So you'll have the last 4 months of last year and the first 5 months of this year. And they've also increased the payout from 40% of the increase to 50%. So that is something that has to run through revenue and through your accountants, and it's something that if you anyone who has an electricity bill needs to make sure that they're on top of that scheme. The other thing is, in relation to your energy consumption, the rates that you're being charged from, you don't have a huge amount of control. We can try and get the best rates possible, but again, that's out of your control. What is in your control is how many units that you're using. Now, I know nearly every business out there has really focused their attention on their energy consumption over the last year, but at the same time, it can be good to get a energy audit done or speak to an expert who can advise on your energy consumption. Trying to have the most efficient, lighting, appliances or heating systems. Any outlay on new more energy efficient systems or equipment will pay back much quicker now than what it would in previous times. And also solar has really become a no-brainer. If you are a business that has roof space and you have long opening hours, then solar, the payback is down to within 3 to 5 years, depending on your site. And it is something that, where prices are going to stay at going forward, it makes absolute sense. So thanks everyone for your time there today. That's all I have to talk on the moment on my presentation. If anyone has any questions, if Duncan wants to open things up there, or anyone has any specific queries, you can say it now, or my contact details are on the screen there as well, and you can get in touch with me directly if you wish.
Great stuff. Thanks, Pat. If you've got any questions, drop them in. Pat, one question from me, thoughts in terms of next winter, because, we're painting a reasonably positive picture. I know we talked earlier and you're talking about it's not positive when you compare it to where we were earlier, 2 or 3 years ago, but certainly it's a more positive picture perhaps than where we were middle of last year.
Yes.
But, in terms of sort of fast forward to October October of 23, no government supports in place. Where do you see things then, worst case scenario? Or is it too difficult to say?
It is very difficult to say, but I think the previous decade, the average unit price was in and around 15 cents per unit. All right, 12 and 15, in around the 15 cent unit mark is what we would normally have been used to. While the situation with Russia is as it is, and the war is there and Putin is there, until Russia comes back to being an energy supplier, a trusted energy supplier, however many years or time that takes, you're probably looking at least double, in around 30 cent per unit mark is probably where we're looking at. But again, it can go higher, and I think any other further crisis or any other major issues to supply, things can change overnight, unfortunately. But yeah, I think in general, the where you're looking at is in around that mark going forward, and it should be the case that anyone who's up for renewal, whether it's up for renewal now or whether it's in next winter, it is a case that, it shouldn't make too much of a difference, because the forward curve will hopefully be staying at that level. So yeah, look, for people to, for retailers who are there, that's the new norm, that's the new level that you're going to, that you can expect to see going forward.
Yeah, and just in terms of if somebody were to, on this call today, were to say, right, well, I've never, I've got a current energy provider, I've been with them for a number of years, it's not giving me what I want, I need to look at it, I need to reduce down the costs, I'm really not comfortable with where things are going with this provider just at the moment, and they come on to you, what's the sort of information that you need from them? What advice do you give on a one-to-one basis?
I normally look to just see the most recent bill, and that gives you an idea of the tariff they're on, their consumption that they're on, what when their contract will expire, and then from that I can go and see what options are available on the market for that account, and go through them with the customer then, and the customer chooses then which way they want to go with it. So we have relationships with all suppliers across the board, and it doesn't make a difference to us which way you go, and it's a case of just trying to get the best option. Now again, when I spoke earlier on about the market tracker and the fixed, at the moment, even though the market tracker is lower, a lot of people are, it's about 50-50. About 50% of the people I'm dealing with are want a fixed price, end of story, don't want any risk, and just want purchase certainty, that's it. Whereas others are happier to to take a positive outlook and hope that the market tracker will outperform the fixed contracts that are there right now.
And in terms of sort of the savings that you're making now for people, because clearly there must be one or two people coming to you and you're going, making them a massive saving, or some that you're probably just shaving a little bit off what they were doing before. But is there, are you finding that you're able to make those savings for people now, or is it still too volatile?
No, the savings, I mean, again, if you're on an out of contract rate, it's 20 cents per unit, it's a difference. So, you're not getting 40%, so that's the big difference. And it's really been very busy over the last number of weeks, because the market is finally in a position now where for a long period last year, like I was saying to you beforehand, I wasn't busy because there was nothing I could sell. I couldn't, I never thought it was a good idea to lock a customer into a contract at 60 or 70 or cent per unit. It says, just sit this, ride this out, is what my advice was to my customers, and say, listen, stay out of contract. At the time, the out of contract rates were way lower than the market price, than the fixed offer. So I said, just wait until that changes, and now it has changed. And now it is the case that people need to make a decision, and they need to. I have customers who were there for nearly a year, sitting out of contract, because it was beneficial for them to do that for over the last year. But now that situation has turned around, and decision has to be made to do something to get off the very high out of contract rates that they're on.
And just thinking more broadly, in terms of where the market's going, and renewables, and wind energy and nuclear and all of that, there's talk of us tapping into, was it French nuclear power and all that sort of thing, was being muted there a few weeks ago. What's your view? I mean, do you think that's the future, dare I say it, or are we going to see massive wind farms on the West Coast, or are we going to see a continued reliance on fossil fuels? I mean, clearly that's probably not going to be the case, is it? But if you were sitting there going, I need to invest in some of these energy companies, where would you be putting your money?
Yeah, well, look, the one positive of the Russia's invasion of Ukraine is that it has led to a seismic shift in energy policy all across Europe, and it has meant that it's massively speeded up the amount of renewables that are coming on stream, and projects that were not viable all of a sudden are viable. You're going to see wind farms going. I know of a big wind farm being done off the east coast of Ireland, up County Down, There's a big wind farm being done there. There will be more done off the west coast probably. Wind, we actually are quite well supplied in Ireland for wind. Wind can cover nearly all of our, on a windy day, wind can cover nearly all of our generation demand. Solar is where the real kick has happened. Solar has really gone through the roof essentially. I've actually solar panels being put on my own house here in the next week. Because it's for me, I think it's a no-brainer now as well. And any company that was looking at solar over the years, the payback was 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it was going to be. Now that's down to only a couple of years, and the return you get on solar, which you'll have for many decades, is great. And every solar installation that goes up is helping with the grid. And I know that whole sector has exploded, and trying to get someone to do it for you now is the problem. And trying to get panels, but at the same time, every single week there's more and more solar going onto roofs, on houses, and onto businesses, and all of that is going to help with the grid and with demand, and that's the same all across Europe.
And there's deals to sell back that energy you're producing. Is that happening in businesses as well, in terms of being able to sell back into the
Not
grid?
yet, but it will soon. So there is a difference there. For example, on my house, on a domestic house, you can get with the microgeneration tariff, where you get paid for energy that you're not using. Because, for example, on a hot summer's day in my house and nobody's in the house during the day, you're hardly using any energy. And if you don't have that, then before 50% of your generation will be going to waste. So now you can feed that back into the grid. But the ideal scenario for any company is that they have a solar array on the roof that matches their base load of consumption all the time. So that whatever business you are, whatever your kind of normal level of units that you're using, your solar array is sized to that. And you should never want to be you should never need to be exporting back into the grid. You should be using everything up yourself that's coming off that solar array.
Brilliant. Okay. Pat, we'll leave it there, shall we? Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. For any of you that are looking to get hold of Pat, his details are there. Pat at Exemplar Energy Solutions. Pat, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you for having you on. And
thank you very much for having me.
All the very best. Thanks a million. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.